Hey there. In the recent episode on here, All That Glitters, we discussed the darker side of Hollywood, from legends of the dead to folklore about curses and crimes. But there are so many other Hollywood stories left to tell, and I've saved another of my favorites for today. So if you're ready, let's get to it. He was a bit of a problem child. In fact, he was such a handful that his family was happy to see him leave the country. And it's honestly hard to blame him for acting out. The man had 8 names, after all. So I'm going to do my best here to say it all correctly. Bear with me here. Here goes. Rodolfo Raffaello Pier Filiberto Guglielmi di Valentina di Antonguela. It might not be perfect, but it's pretty close. And I think you clearly understand my point. Cursing a child with that sort of baggage will only come back to bite you. Rodolfo, however, agreed with his family and left Italy at the age of 18 in search of new opportunities. He arrived in New York City in 1913 and settled into that age-old hustle of trying to find work that paid well, but also satisfied him. He waited tables, he washed cars, and even tried his hands at gardening. But within a couple of years, he was working under the name Rodolfo Guglielmi at a weird job called taxi dancing. Basically, he was employed by a dance hall, a place where hundreds of people would show up each night to hear music and dance, and patrons could rent him as a dance partner. And because they paid a fee based on how much time they danced with him, it was sort of like paying a taxi fare, so taxi dancing. That all came to an end in 1917, though, when his love interest dragged him into the drama of her failing marriage, a conflict that ended in the husband's murder. Rodolfo didn't pull the trigger, but he didn't like the heat either, so he got far, far away from the kitchen. And that's how he ended up on the West Coast, in Hollywood. For the next couple of years, he took on bit parts in a variety of films, but under a different name, one that wasn't connected to a New York City murder. Thankfully, he had a few family names to pick from, and he settled on one that would become a Hollywood legend, Rudolph Valentino. The next few years would be a roller coaster of huge successes, multiple girlfriends, marriages, failed business dealings, and studios. Along the way, he starred in the 1921 breakout hit The Sheik, which turned him into the hottest star in Hollywood for a while. But the tragedy, both personal and professional, would always be a weight that slowed him down. In August of 1926, after finishing a new film called The Son of the Sheik, he collapsed before undergoing surgery for a number of infections in his internal organs. Rudolph Valentino would pass away on August 23rd, and that last film would be released 2 weeks later to much success. But his story isn't over, because his death shocked the nation, and his funeral in New York City was swarmed by over 50,000 mourners. At least 100 of them were injured in the chaos, and the funeral home had to set up a makeshift emergency room to care for them all. A number of women even fainted as they simply passed by his coffin. Oh, and one last thing. Valentino was said to have purchased a ring a few months before his death, during a visit to San Francisco. He had been warned about the ring by the seller, that all who had owned it before him had suffered tragedy or death, but Rudolph didn't believe it or care, and it seems that he was wearing that ring the day he died. After that, his girlfriend took it for herself, and less than a year later, she married another man. Soon, the couple felt like tragedy was following them everywhere, and their fortune vanished. But when she gave the ring to a friend, oddly enough, a Rudolph Valentino lookalike, that man died in a shooting accident. The dead man's best friend, a guy with the memorable name of Joe Casino, took the ring and died a few months later when he was run over by a truck. Joe's brother decided to take the ring after that, but a burglar stole it before getting shot to death by the police. Finally, after it ended up on the finger of yet another young actor, that man died of a mysterious illness just 2 weeks later. And after that, someone had the bright idea to lock the ring up in a vault in a bank where it could no longer harm anyone. But somehow the ring disappeared after the bank burned down. And in the end, I can't think of a better object to represent the Hollywood experience that so many people have had. It's shiny and attractive, and oh so tempting to try and get your hands on it. But there's darkness there as well. Because, as the old cliche so eloquently puts it, all that glitters is not gold. As always, folks, thanks for watching today. Credits for today's episode are in the description below. Of course, Lore has been a podcast since 2015 with over 350 million downloads to date. You can learn more about this show over at lorepodcast.com. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to click the thumbs up and then click subscribe and the bell icon so that you don't miss future episodes. And you can also follow this show on social media, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Lore Podcast. And when you do, say hi. I like it when people say hi. And as always, thanks for listening.